Hello, I'm Frost, and welcome to my weekly update on all the events that are happening in the conflict between the Imperium and PAPI. We're now covering the week of the 16th of November. Lots has gone on, and I have plenty to report on. Welcome back. So, whilst the week of the 9th was very similar to the week prior to that, and there was mostly IHUB flipping and structures being hit, mostly valuable structures like Fortizars, things are very, very different this week. There was a very definite push made by the PAPI forces. And what I'll do is I'll cover the various days and what happened during those days. And at the end, I will kind of cover the potential consequences of all the events that have happened during this week. So first up, Monday 16th, kicked into high gear and they went straight for some new constellations in terms of reinforcing the IHUBs. And I will go back up to my box as always. There we go. And if we go over to the Delft map, you can see this grey section here, this grey constellation, SPNZ-Z. So these IHUBs were all reinforced on the Monday in the evening, UTC time. And then also in Aquarius, this section up here, 3B TAC IWE, that's the light green one on the left-hand side, which is the connection between, if we go back to the Delft map, it's kind of bizarre the way this works. So you can see this constellation on the left here, where you've got 1DQ1, which is the subcap staging for Imperium. If you jump down into D-TACW, into Aquarius, you can then basically, through that constellation, pop up all the way up here on the right-hand side in F20 or F20. That was all reinforced on the Monday night. So generally on a 2-day timer. So then these timers then came out on the Wednesday. Now, after all that work was done on the Monday night, this was pretty much uncontested. There was basically a few sectors trying to come in and jam, but there wasn't any kind of major form from the Imperium side in terms of trying to stop these IHUBs from being reinforced. It was kind of more just a harassment than any kind of full-scale conflict. Now, we then move on to Tuesday, and on Tuesday, we had a faction Fortizar go down. So these faction Fortizars, if you're not familiar with the concept of these, they used to be NPC stations in nullsec, sovereign nullsec. So not NPC nullsec, but systems that are owned by players. And these NPC stations were then converted into these faction Fortizars. And there's only a limited amount of them. I think it was just over 1,000, 1,200 of them. And it was a few years ago now, they were flipped, I think 2 or 3 years ago. And whoever owned the sovereignty in those systems were given these faction Fortizars, but they are limited. Once they die, they're gone forever. And so their value is much, much higher than a standard Fortizar, which is a few bill. And as you can see, this Dracus Fortizar that went down in Delft was worth 50 billion. And the thing to note about these Fortizars is that the Goonswarm in particular have a lot of them, and the reason why they have a lot of them was in September 2018 the Imperium were fighting Guardians of the Galaxy, and they beat Guardians of the Galaxy into submission, and in order for the surrender terms to not be attacked for 6 months and to allow Guardians of the Galaxy to be able to extract and save all their assets, they had to turn over 40 of these faction Fortizars over to Goonswarm. And there are a few people now in these in the PAPI side who would gladly see a lot of these faction Fortizars die, which they feel were theirs in the first place, and they had to give them up due to a surrender. And so something to be aware of, a little bit of backstory there on these faction Fortizars and kind of why they matter to both sides. Okay, so then moving on, we came on to Wednesday, and then Wednesday, these two constellations were then fought over. So SPNZ and the one in 3B TAC IWE in Aquarius. Now, the one in 3B TAC was pretty much uncontested. That wasn't so much the case in SPNZ, as these systems are kind of much more important to the Imperium, primarily as they're good ratting and mining space, and they still were very active in terms of their player base. But also it is a route to Fountain, and we'll come back to that later. But you can see down here, you got YTAC2, and that is the only route into Fountain from Delve. You can't actually bridge or jump caps or anything like that from 1DQ or E30 up here, which is Helm's Deep, which are the two staging systems for the Imperium. So the only route is literally through this constellation. So this was fought over to a point, and Goonswarm and Imperium did form for this, but they were kind of held back as PAPI brought a lot of Eagle doctrine, primarily a lot of Eagle fleets, and they kind of camped them in D-TACW and in T5Z. They kind of jumped between those two, and just kind of kept this the majority of this constellation blocked off so they could entosis the nodes. And just to remind you, with entosis, just because, let's say, T5Z IHUB is being contested, it doesn't mean the nodes will spawn just in T5Z. They will spawn in the whole constellation. And so therefore, if you can hold the gate at like D-TACW, then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 systems that nodes can spawn in versus one for the opponent who can't get past your gate camp. And so that gate camp appeared to be successful, and these systems were flipped and they were turned over to test. Now, in the time since then, if I go over to my IHUB pages, there we go, you can see, so we got T5Z was test, we still have 4XO as test as well. The others were flipped back, but as you know from when I've talked about sovereignty in the past and IHUBs, that once an IHUB is taken, even if the IHUB is taken back, it's 5 weeks before you can make use of that IHUB in terms of putting in jump bridges and sino jammers and stuff like that. So whilst they've been taken back, they're not that important from the point of view of PAPI. It does affect Imperium though, because now things like anomalies can't be generated, and so the ability to rat and mine here has been greatly reduced. So, and the same with Quirius. If I go over to IHUB here, you will see now these are 4 out of the 5 systems are test, and then 1 has gone back to Goonswarm, as in Condi. So that's kind of what happened on Wednesday. Then there was, what else was happened on Wednesday? Okay, yes, that was it. So then on Thursday, first thing in the morning, so very early, so directly after these constellations were fought over, 2 more faction Fortizars went down. So we had another one in Delve, this one for 33 billion. And then another one went down a little bit later in Quirius for 54 billion. So these faction Fortizars are being targeted by PAPI, and this will be an ongoing thing. And to be honest, I'm actually quite surprised that these haven't been unanchored. I thought they would have seen that coming. And after these kind of 3 kills in 1 week, I would imagine that a number of them will be unanchored now. They are too valuable to save. I mean, the benefit that you've got is you've got a lot of them. If more of them die, then they become more valuable. But I think you would rather other people's faction Fortizars die rather than your own. So talking of Fortizar losses, Fortizars have been hit a lot in the last week by PAPI. And as you can see here, that if we go down to November 19th, you've got 3 in Delve right here, 1, 2, and 3. So FWST, D-TAC3, and PR TAC. And then period basis was hit as well. So if you remember last week, I said the period basis was acting as a staging system. It's also worth mentioning there's 2 Keepstars that died in Esoteria. This one here in HT4 and the other one in HT4. So there was 2. And these have been causing problems for Test in particular. Because they're owned by the Bastion, and the Initiative and Bastion were using these to harass the miners and ratters in Test home space. And these have been causing problems for a while. And I know that there have been multiple attempts on trying to take these out, and it looks like they've finally achieved in doing that. And then, so things are still going down. The other thing I did notice as well is that some of these structures now are going into low power. And what this does is, if we go bring up a lovely little chart here, if they've got fuel in them and they're fully powered, then you have to drag down the shields, then you have an armor timer, then you have a hull timer. If they go into low power, but they've consumed fuel in the last 7 days, then they only have an armor and a hull timer. And so we're now seeing structures going into low power where the modules are not online anymore. Now, once this goes beyond 7 days, then it will go into abandoned, and at which point these Fortizars will only have one timer. So literally the forces can just show up and destroy them. And so as PAPI are kind of gaining more ground and getting more established, there is less incentive to keep these things fueled. And so they're kind of being stripped of all their modules and kind of just being left to die rather than trying to run the risk of unanchoring them. So something to be aware of as well, that I would imagine that we're going to see kind of more structures being destroyed in the next few weeks, simply from them going from full power into low power and then eventually into an abandoned state. So they're kind of an easy kill to get. So that's been going on. By the way, if you enjoy my content, I'm going to say it right now, please give me a like, please subscribe to the channel. At the moment, I'm doing these every week, and I'm getting a lot of good feedback on this. I really appreciate that, so thank you very much. And you can help the channel a lot by subscribing, hitting the bell icon, and also do check out the Discord as well. I'm on Discord and happy to chat about this stuff as well. All right, so moving on. Then we got to Friday. Now, Friday got really interesting because if we go back to our map here, you can see T5Z right here. So what happened on that particular day was on the Friday, after they'd secured the IHUB and they put a test IHUB in there, Test dropped a Keepstar right there at about 1700. And fleets were formed by PAPI, but it was left to anchor all on its own. There was no flash forms of any major forces from what I could see from 1DQ, from Goonswarm and Imperium, and it was able to anchor uncontested. And what this meant was that, sorry, not anchor, it was dropped uncontested. So 24 hours later, it goes into anchoring, where it will then go from being just kind of a semi-visible structure into being something that's permanently in place. And there's a timer based on that. Now, because of that, everyone knew it was coming. And so CTAs were called all over the place for the Saturday. Now, before the Saturday actually happened, another couple of events that happened in E30 up here, which, as you know, is Helm's Deep. And so the whole idea with that is that there's a Keepstar right on this RF TAC gate. Loads of supers and gate campers are all sat around, basically protecting anything from coming in this gate. The thing is it doesn't stop, even though this area is sino-jammed, it doesn't stop covert ops. And a Hell, that's a super carrier, actually died in E30 itself to PAPI forces that were able to black ops in and catch it. Now, the thing that's really bizarre in here is that you really should never ever rat in your staging system. The reason why is normally because you can do, you can't drop capitals in the same system. So you want to be ratting in a different system. Obviously now, because all the systems are sino-jammed in that kind of, that whole back pocket, that back area of Delve, it kind of makes it kind of a moot point. But either way, what it shows is that PAPI forces already have projection into this. Even if it's only with bombers and black ops, they are able to get behind into Helm's Deep. And it's something that, you know, is going to affect miners and ratters more as time goes on. For now, this isn't the main area of focus. I think this is just simply an opportunistic thing that happened, but it will be something that will become more of an issue in the future. And then on the Saturday before the actual Keepstar went into its anchoring process, there was a battle that took place in, let me see if I can remember, there, 5-TAC CQDA, which is a mouthful. If we go back to our map, it should be, where is it? It's somewhere around here. There it is, right there. So it's in the approach to Fountain. And Pandemic Horde, and I think NC, were going after a jump bridge, and Goonswarm decided to contest it. And if we go back to if I can find it again, I have so many tabs up, and there we go. You can see that basically Imperium lost 20 billion ISK and PAPI lost 34. And it was primarily Munins that went down. And the initiative, once again, came out with an unexpected doctrine. I have not seen in this in a while. These are the RT Abaddons. So Abaddons fitted with artillery. Now this may seem like a really strange thing to do, but Abaddons obviously get bonuses to energy-based weapons. But the problem with energy-based weapons, they use loads of cap. And so by putting artillery on Abaddons, even if you get capped out, it doesn't matter. You just basically sit there and you can just keep shooting even with zero cap. and they do a lot of damage, and they got pretty good projection. So the initiative brought a load of Abaddons, and then, as you can see, a lot, and then obviously the Cerberus doctrine, which is kind of the real favorite doctrine at the moment, the Imperium, came out as well, and you can see they brought out a fair few with them, and then loads of bubbles and loads of other bits and pieces, and a lot of unions were unable to kind of get out of range of these Abaddons and the Cerberuses, and a lot of them died. So yeah, there was a fight there that kind of flipped in Imperium's favor, not by much, but it did all the same. 79 ship loss to Imperium versus 223 to PAPI, so I think that qualifies as a feed. So yeah, both sides are making mistakes. Both sides, are fighting the fight at certain times. But the thing that this needs to be shown here is the Imperium are really picking their fights at the moment. They're not just going for the old thing. They want to get stuff where they're actually going to get a result. Then we came on to the anchoring of the Keepstar. Now, this was a major form, and let me double check. Yeah, so in YZ9, which is the staging at the time, I counted 4,250 locals in that system. So my cat's just meowed at me because my cat's hungry. So yeah, and the Imperium only got out 2,000, and so as a consequence, they were outnumbered 2-1. And they had to make the strategic call as do they try and stop this Keepstar from anchoring or not? And they made the decision not to contest it. They formed and they kind of all sat in one DQ, but they did not attack. And I think they made the decision that they didn't want to waste thousands and thousands on the battleships on another Keepstar anchoring. And whilst it brings an advantage to PAPI, it is not so much of an advantage that it's worth wasting thousands and thousands of battleships on and loads of man hours, because this could have probably been a repeat of YZ9, and they would have just anchored another one the following day and the day after, and then we're basically burning everybody out again. So the Imperium decided not to contest it, and it got anchored. So as a result of it anchoring, obviously, you've got 4,000 people that were all kind of formed up to do stuff. So what they did instead is they went off and reinforced 2 constellations, 3 in fact. So NJU down here, which is also in that route to Fountain, and then in Aquarius, let me just bring up the constellation names again. 4QZ down in the southwest corner here was also reinforced, and then I think as well a number of these systems were reinforced up the top here. That's the orange, the burnt orange. In YX-LYK. These are kind of significant as well, as they are the route into low-sec for Imperium, and so they want to try and cut off any potential for jump gates, etc., being placed there. So that's kind of everything that's kind of happened. So as of tonight, then these systems hello, my cat's just right here. So as a consequence, I'll feed you in a sec. As a consequence, these are coming out of reinforced tonight. So these are going to be contested tonight, these 2 constellations and this low sec one up here. And the other thing that happened then, obviously, as a consequence of the anchoring of the Keepstar, is a move up. And to show that mistakes happen on both sides, as you remember, there was a RAG that died last week in, I think, KEE, this system right here, and it was just kind of left on a structure. Well, this time it was a test Titan that went down, and it died in D-TACW. Now, if we go back to Delve again, D-TACW is right here. And from what I can see, and if anybody's got the full story on this, I would love to hear it. It looks like they jumped into T5Z, and then rather than docking, they must have warped to the gate. They would have had no reason to jump into D-TACW at all. So they must have walked to the gate, then got caught on the gate, then jumped through. But then, as you can see right here, this Titan died 60 kilometers off the gate, so that's a lot of bumping. So I don't know how it ended up 60 kilometers off the gate, but it was left to die. And the reason why it was left to die is, when one Titan like this makes a mistake, and it's a silly mistake, then this is where things can escalate really badly. And this is where Imperium are really good. They will flash form caps in no time for an escalation like this that's not planned, that's not strategic. there's a consequence of a mistake, because then people make more and more mistakes, and these can escalate into a complete disaster. And so PAPI made the decision clearly to go, you know what, you made a mistake, you're going to die. And as a consequence of that, you can see that let me list all pilots. You can see there's about 20 or so dreads were dropped in. There was a Serb fleet that got on there. And if we actually go down, right down to the bottom, I could only see about 3 Dictors. I think there was 2 Firecatchers and a Sabre. So in theory, that could have been cleared off, and the Titan could have been saved, but it was too high risk. And it was just, I think the person here got punished for making a mistake. You own a Titan, you are responsible for making sure you don't make any silly mistakes. So that's what happened. Now, where does this all lead from here? Well, first thing to be aware of is with Delve is that Fountain is now kind of cut off. So where it's going to happen is that T5Z, if we go to IHUBs, back to IHUBs again, so you can see that Test owned this IHUB. They're going to want to keep this as much as possible. They really don't want to lose this now. And if they can keep this for 5 weeks, they can get this Sino jammer in, and they can get really well established here, and it will push up the timer on their Keepstar, making their Keepstar much harder to fight. Now, the reason why this Keepstar was dropped here is to basically allow a almost permanent gate camp of this gate from 1DQ into T5Z. So it kind of cuts off access to Fountain, which is kind of an easy place to mine and rat. It was outside of the war zone at the moment. So that's kind of getting cut off. It cuts off these 2 constellations as well that still have industry going there, and obviously it will make it easier for, especially if these IHUBs are taken, it'll make it much easier for PAPI to be able to destroy Satios and high value structures that are in these constellations. It then also, just puts a block right between the pipe between 1DQ and E3O, although jump gates are still available between 1DQ and this back pocket up here, and that's going to be the next stage of where things go. Now, what's going to happen over the next week or 2? I think it's going to be primarily disrupting life in Delve. Now, one of the things that I've got for you to show you, I've got 2 things. We had the monthly economic report came out last week, and obviously I want to show you this. This is from October 2020, monthly economic report, total destroyed value by region. So as you can see, we're kind of almost hitting 11 trillion-isk being destroyed in Delve last month. So I think that shows, a lot of stuff is happening, a lot of stuff is dying. It is a full-scale war going on. And whilst it's not immediately obvious, sometimes a lot of people just sit in Fortizars or in Keepstars waiting to undock, and nothing much seems to be happening. Stuff is dying. It may not just necessarily be on your fleet, but there is definitely a conflict going on. But what we're talking about is is routine life for Goonswarm specifically. Now, the best thing to do here is to look at mining over the various periods. So you can see in May 2020, before the war kind of was declared, Delve mined 1.7 trillion in Delve. Their raw cores were out in force, and this was like this for many months prior to this. Then war was declared, and in June 2020, that dropped down to just over 600 billion, which is a big drop. But then it's kind of maintained, so you can see all the way through to September, we're still only at 500 billion. And then in October, we dropped down to 400 billion. Now, this is primarily still subcaps. So, you got people with loads of Hulk, alts, and porpoises doing boosts, and they're still able to mine. And so this Keepstar being anchored and taking these last final IHUBs in Delve is trying to really push down this as much as possible. And the picture's kind of the same with ratting as well, but I just thought I'd just show you the mining one. So this is kind of where the war is going, and why this war is taking months, because it's about grinding down this ability to make it, this ability to kind of live your kind of routine life, and suddenly the war becomes everything and disturbs everything. And this is kind of where it's going. So that's kind of pretty much it. So, over the next week and 2 weeks, I can imagine that's, going to be the main focus. In the run up to Christmas, I'm going to go back to my constellation map again. The fighting is all going to be in this pink region over here. Okay, so the constellation of OTAC E1MK or EIMK. So at the moment, as long as IHUBs are here, then they can have jump gates into this pocket up here, all of this region in what they call Helm's Deep, or the Imperium called Helm's Deep. And so they can move their subcaps and move their pilots without needs for jump clones in and out of there quite easily. So over the next few weeks, there is going to be some serious fighting going on over cyanojammers, over jump gates, and then finally IHUBs in this little pink constellation down here. Obviously with 1DQ being the staging system and being right in the middle of this constellation, these are going to be bloody fights. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out over the next few weeks. And that's a wrap. Just about good. I'm just losing my voice right now. So I hope you found that interesting. As I mentioned halfway through the video, please give me a like, please subscribe, hit the bell icon, come into my Discord. It's linked in the description below. And I'm happy to chat about all of this stuff. And if I don't see you in Discord, I will hopefully see you here next week. Thank you for watching. Until the next one. Bye.